So we have intellectual boundaries, we have physical boundaries, we have emotional boundaries, emotional boundaries. The emotional boundary means that every person needs to feel safe, and every person needs to feel supported, and every person needs to feel respected in relationships. So emotional boundaries help us to maintain the space that is needed in order to process our own emotions. Have you ever been through something and people are trying to get in your business and ask, oh, what's wrong? What's wrong? You have to process it first before you can even talk about it. You need time, so there is an emotional barrier. It's like, give me a few minutes. I just need a few minutes. It doesn't mean that I don't want to talk to anybody, but I don't want to talk to anybody right now. There's sometimes, even in your ritual in coming home, to help you to make the transition from the workplace back to the home environment, you have to have some cleansing ritual that helps you to get all of the issues of everything that you've gone through over the course of that day, dealing with traffic, trains, buses, unreasonable bosses, and all of this kind of thing. And now you're trying to transition into who you are at home, and you have to have a ritual. I don't care whether it's coming home and reading the mail or newspaper or whatever it is. It's your cleansing ritual to get you in a mindset to say, okay, now I can be mama. What you want now, baby? But give me a few minutes. And if you catch a person before they made that transition, you're liable to get snapped up. People just need some personal space, and you have to know the people that you live with, so don't always just greet people, with problems, because they need to make a transition. And you want to help them to know you are not still at your office. This is our home. Take it off, shake it off, whatever you need to do. But listen, let's give them time to just emotionally process this stuff, get sort of cleansed of that thing, and now in a mindset where we can treat each other like civil human beings in an atmosphere of love, peace, and harmony. And so this is why we have to have emotional boundaries, emotional boundaries. Then there are what's called spiritual boundaries, spiritual boundaries. Now, spiritual boundaries help us to realize that we have to respect the rights of other people to believe whatever they want to believe. Because, nowadays, there are people that are heathens and atheists and all kinds of stuff. They want to believe whatever they want to believe. They have all kinds of philosophies about God. Some people have created their own personal philosophy. But let me just tell you about that. They have a right to believe whatever they want to believe about it. But Romans chapter 16, verse 17 says this: now I beseech you, brethren, mark them, set a boundary between those who cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine which you have learned, and avoid them. Avoid them. This is for people particularly who call themselves Christians, but they live like the devil. He says, mark them and avoid them. Mark them and avoid them. Mark them and avoid them. You got to create a boundary. You have to create a boundary that this is not how we live. This is not how we live. And so they have the right to live however they want to live. But we have a right to impose a boundary and say, not in my space, because I don't want your compromise in my life. I don't want you to contaminate me with the way that you call yourself a Christian and you live any kind of way. I don't want to be around that, because compromise could seep into my life by seeing your example. So he says, mark them and avoid them, because these folks are living contrary to the doctrine that you know that you've learned that is solidly based on the Word of God. And so boundaries really come as a result of a person having a healthy sense of self-worth. Because when you don't value yourself, then you don't set any boundaries on yourself, and so you end up doing anything. You become like a doorknob. You give everybody a turn. And it's amazing, and people that do that don't value themselves. There's an esteem issue that's there. When you love yourself and respect yourself, you don't let other people disrespect you. Because if it doesn't help you to grow, you have to sometimes, when you don't have the right without serious repercussions, you have to learn how to check out up here and go to that special place in your own mind. You have to just turn off, sign off when people are talking about you. And I'm just telling you, you have to be mature enough to know how to sign off so that you don't go ahead and give somebody a piece of your mind and walk off and lose your job, not knowing what in the world you're going to do next. You have to close off and say, I know they're not talking to me. They are not talking to me. You have to go in, have this conversation, and go to that peaceful place. You have to go into your the secret place on the inside, that's right here. Set a boundary and said, you know what you're doing is not healthy for me. That is not good for me. This is not for me. I don't want that in my life. So you have to, out of respect for yourself, your own worth, to say, you know what, we don't speak that kind of language in my home. We don't use those kinds of substances in my home. And let me just tell you this. I've discovered oftentimes that if it's not good for children, it's really not good for you. I mean, at the end of the day, just raising children imposes boundaries and disciplines in the lives of adults if you're going to be responsible and set good examples for your children. They impose discipline because you don't want your children picking up this, so you don't do it. And you don't want them talking this way, so you don't talk that way. So when you set the right example for your children, examples are always clear. Always clear. Always clear. So you have to take the time and make sure that you respect yourself. Respect yourself so that you set boundaries. But every person who has self-respect has self-imposed boundaries as to what they will tolerate and what they will not. And when you respect yourself, and a young lady goes out on a date and some man is disrespecting her, she said, this date is over. This date is over. Listen, carry your debit card so you can get home. I mean, you just, you know, but you have to impose boundaries on yourself, that I'm not going to let anybody just treat me any kind of way. Set boundaries of yourself, that I'm a child of God. And I don't roll this way. You might talk to other people like that. I'm not your being. I'm a queen. I'm a princess. You know, you have to, that rolls out of a self-respect, that you set boundaries. You set boundaries. Listen, I would rather be by myself than to be disrespected and beat up and call somebody's, you know. And I know poor brothers that are broke down and taking whatever they can get, and they just, but it's an esteem issue. That's an esteem issue where you don't set boundaries. And so it allows you to tolerate abuse when you don't set boundaries for yourself. And so we have to learn how to set boundaries for ourselves that help us to divorce ourselves from situations that do not help us to grow.